Got it? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Helen Lockett, and I'm the chair of the Sydney North Local Planning Panel today. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Camaragal, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. The meeting today is to determine 4 applications, and the panel members alongside me today are Jan Morell to my left, Brendan Randalls to my right, and John Bohane, our community representative. Does any member of the panel have a declaration to make on any matter at this time?
No conflicts.
No conflict.
And I have no conflicts either. The panel has been provided with an assessment report for each application prepared by council, and we've been fully briefed and issues raised during that time, and submissions have been considered. So please, you do not need to repeat your submission, but rather address the pertinent issues that you want us to pay attention to. We've also been to each site and made our own inspections together. The meeting is being held by public teleconference, and so I respectfully ask that everyone respects each other's time and puts their microphones on mute when they're not speaking, and to be respectful. We usually allow 5 minutes per person to speak and make their points, and then we ask for the applicant to address the panel if we have any questions. After hearing from the speakers, we'll adjourn and confer amongst ourselves to make our determinations, and they will be available on the council's website within 7 days.
Live, sweet. I'm live.
Sorry? Okay, sorry. There is to be no other recording or filming of this meeting. Thank you all, and we'll go to our first item for today, which is 21 Cowdroy Avenue, Camaragal, which is the demolition of an existing dwelling house and construction of a new dwelling. And the first person registered to speak is John Jamieson. Is John Jamieson with us?
Yes. You're on mute, John.
Can you unmute him, Peter?
We can ask.
John, can you hear us? John Jamieson? It's like he can't hear us.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. Could you just please identify issues and address the panel?
I've just unmuted myself. My name's John Jamieson. Did you want me to talk?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Thanks for your time. I'm a neighbour at a 2/12 Allen Street, and I did lodge an objection to this proposed development. I'm pleased that the executive summary and the agenda has recommended refusal, and understand that from without going through and labelling it being too high, excessive excavation, the setbacks on the side, the massing, etc. What I'm concerned about, though, is in the body of the report prepared by the council officer. When I looked through it, I was a little bit concerned that whilst refusal's been recommended, when it got on to about the principles of view sharing, etc., as it went through all the various neighbouring properties, including ours, the conclusion of the council officer was that the effects were either minor or negligible. That just concerned me a little, that it might give a bit of a green light to the applicants and their architects to come back and say, well, people's views aren't going to be that badly affected. Okay, we might reduce it a bit. So that's the main thrust of my concern and why I wanted to address the panel. The only other thing which I noticed reading through the report, I think it's just a minor typo on the form and massing section of the council officer's report on page 28. It has an incorrect reference to 10 plus number 16 Armstrong Street, which I think is perhaps a typo, and I presume that the references to the massing, etc., being out of scale are still correct and they're relevant to this property.
Okay. Right, thank you, John. Does the panel have any questions for Mr. Johnston?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. May I have Sienna Moses Morgan?
Hi, yes. Just wait, I'm just starting the video. There we go. Hi. So I'm just talking on behalf of my dad, Leonard Morgan. He's a bit unwell right now. So I just had some points that he wanted to get across. So pretty much, so me and my brother live at 8 Allen Street, which is directly behind 21 Corduroy Avenue. And so pretty much our main issues are like the visual bulkiness and privacy issues as well. And we're glad that it got refused. But we are a bit worried, like John said. I was looking through the report and it was saying that the impact on Unit 2 and Unit 1, 8 Allen Street was minimal for our views and our privacy and stuff. And I just feel like in reality, like it will probably end up not being very minimal at all, especially since, so the current building as it is, I think my dad actually submitted an objection like a few years ago before it was built. And it's already the tallest in that line, like in all the Corduroy Avenue buildings. But it's still tolerable because of its pitched roof. And there's only like one window that's sort of overlooking our backyard. But, with the new development, it would pretty much be a facade of just floor to ceiling length windows, which I think would be a massive issue for privacy, since like we have a deck in the backyard that we use often, like every day. So that's just one of the main issues that we would have. And along with like our views it would be minor to our views, but just the visual cohesiveness of the views from like the top floor and the bottom floor, I think would be greatly impacted. And I think so going forward, my dad, so he was an architect for his whole life, and he actually wrote a letter a while ago. So I'm just trying to find it, and he was saying that the height is actually pretty much 2.5 meters over the council's building height controls, which is just quite excessive. And he was also saying, moving forward for them to be able to develop their house like as close to their plan as possible. He was saying they could reduce the floor to floor height of the three floors from 3.32 meters to 2.650 meters. And then they could also push forward the top floor 3 meters to the north, which would overall just take off an extra story of windows that's overlooking our backyard. And I think it would allow for pretty much everything that the DA was hoping for. So and all in all, that would end up with the entire building coming well below the height regulation. So that's pretty much all the points he wanted me to get across. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thanks.
No, not from me.
Okay.
No.
Thanks, Sienna. We also have Ashton Moses Morgan.
I'm guessing she was speaking on behalf of him.
Were you speaking on behalf, Sienna? Were you speaking on behalf of Ashton?
I was speaking on behalf of my father, but he's also a tenant at Unit 1, so I guess he would probably like to speak as well. Oh, sorry, he's not logged on. I guess I spoke for all of us then. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next speaker we have registered is Natasha Benari. Natasha, are you ready to speak?
Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
I am. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time. Look, it really, I can concur exactly with Sienna. We own number 10 Allen Street, which has 2 apartments that are tenanted. One, the tenant in the lower apartment has been there a considerable time, and he and I've been having a conversation, and we've gone and looked around the back property, and that would certainly be our concern, is the privacy issues and the bulk and everything really that I've previously put down in our submission to council. We've got a long-standing history. We actually rented in Cowdrow Avenue many years ago, literally at number 23 Cowdroy, so we know the area really well, and it has the immense views, and I just really feel that I don't think it needs to be to that sort of scale to enjoy the environment that it's already positioned in, and the impact that it will have on all the properties in the immediate rear of the development. So really, that's really where we're coming from.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or
No.
speaker? So the last speaker we have registered to speak is George Lippincott. George, are you online, and would you want to address the panel?
Yep. Oh, so you're on mute, George.
You're on mute.
I think he's trying to.
If you could just press the button to unmute yourself, George.
It's on his eye.
He
was having
Yeah,
issues.
right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Yes. Is Tony Leung online as well? He's the architect.
Tony.
Yes, I'm online, George. Yeah.
Tony, do you want to address those issues, or do you want me to?
It's up to you. You're the registered speaker. Anything that you would like us to comment, I can assist you, George.
Fine. Well, look, let me just say for a few minutes, look, I understand neighbours' concerns, and of course they have to be addressed. We can address them. What I would really need is guidelines from the panel as to what they would need to have it passed. Now, we have a problem of ceiling heights of 2.4 metres. The only way we could rectify these was to rebuild the building. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Now, there are a number of things we can do. It's 3.3 at the moment. We can reduce it to 2.7 without any... Ideally, we're trying to optimise the breeze aspect and to self-ventilate rather than use air conditioning. But if necessary, it can come down. And if we came down, would that meet with your approval, or are there other issues? You can't give that answer to that.
Yeah,
we can just take that on notice. That's all. We can't. It's an amended application, or a different application.
So what we're saying is, George, that would be an amendment that you would have to do under what we call a review under section 8.2. It's not something that we can just condition. It would be a matter of you submitting amended plans, and then they can be considered. But we can't do it on the run, on the floor.
No, I do understand that.
Yeah.
Would there be other substantive issues?
Oh, well, there'll be some comment by the panel when we do our determination, and that will no doubt provide you with some, or could provide you with some guidance depending upon what the panel decides at the end of the day.
Yes. Look, let me add that in the original application, we did indicate that there were buildings in the immediate area that matched what we were putting forward. In other words, the height, the bulk are all in the immediate area, and I think you would have seen that today as you went around. The building that we're proposing will be a high quality building, and it will add to the area and will in turn add to the value of the street. Now, not that that's an issue for the design panel, I appreciate, but quality always is, and this is a quality building. I'd be happy for Tony to answer any specific aspects, given that he's the architect and designer and understands what I'm prepared to modify. Tony, would you be able to add anything to that?
You're on mute.
Just want to say
Sorry.
thank you so much for all the commentary from the neighbor today, and I understand their positions, and I don't have any like further commentary beyond that point. There is a clause 4.6 regarding height, and I do understand that the current building is beyond the height envelope due to the program in which we have to accommodate. And further, and I understand council also requested further report and further study during the application for more view impact study, and those items will be addressed through the review process like later on. And I appreciate also from George, perspective that we can't make decision on the run. It will have to be go through proper assessment. And as George has pointed out to us and to you today, contextually this building is characterized in the sense that the main building that is also over the height limit, and it is his view that through the process of this design, if amendment can be made, that we can comply with the height controls by adjusting 4-4 ceiling height and various mean. And I'm sure, through further view and design analysis, a lot of those commentary that we'll make today can be addressed later on. And thank you so much for having us here today.
Just one question, if I can ask of you, Tony. When we look at it in the streetscape and also from the rear, it would appear that the top story is one that's causing many issues. So I was just wondering, and I also understand there is a desire to have higher floor to ceiling heights, but could not the development application accommodate the space required with one level off the top?
And that's something that we have to discuss with the client regarding in terms of the changes in terms of those parameter. And like at the moment, the design is very much driven like based on his family need, and it is actually, as George said, he is in a position to make further adjustment to the design. And you're right, that the top level, as what you have seen today on the floor plan, addressed being a non-compliance in the 4.6. And if you look across in terms of, let me just perhaps try to share screen in the context that the existing, give me 1 second, just trying to share the screen with you, because then that might be easier to see. Give me a second. Share the screen. We might then have to look at the, let's just see. So can you guys see my screen?
Coming in now.
Yeah. You have the cross sections?
Yep.
Yeah, so what we have shown today in blue is the existing building outline, which is kind of like a gable reform. the proportion in which we are over in height across is in here, and also because the building is sloping down. The fact that the building extended, you know, like sort of like the extended beyond the high limit, there are treatment of parapet that can be adjusted, you know, so then we can relocate a plant from elsewhere. The 4-4 ceiling height can also be looked at across all this level, and that would take the building further down. But nevertheless, because the building land modulated in such a way, so it's so the existing building is already over the height limit. And like, so these are some of the early view analysis in which we have undertaken. And as you can see, the existing building ridge form is sort of across here, and these are the bit that is over the height control. Where does the built form come from? That, like, which is the drawing that sort of George was referring to. The subject site over here has like number of story across here, and they're not too dissimilar in the context of if you're referencing all the neighbor building when you view from the opposite side. So it's I think, you know, like the interface with the neighbor and designing something that is you know, more in harmony with some of those view that was shared by the neighbor is important, and certainly that is something that you know, we would further discussion with the owner to make those refinements if, you know, if George agreed to it. So that's sort of like sum up, you know, like the high control. But it is correct in what you're saying is like the majority of the problem is in here, and it would appear that, you know, like George have softened, you know, the need, and some of this ceiling height could be compromised. And should that be the case, then of course the building in terms of the bulk and scale would change substantially, and those built form that you see early on, you know, would not actually create the impact that it has today.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, and we'll go to the next application. The next application that we will go to is 7 Ryries Parade, Cremorne, and there's no one registered to speak, and there's one observer. So on that basis, we'll just go directly to the next one, which is 5 to 7 Lower Wickham Road, Neutral Bay. We have one registered to speak, that's Branko Charachina. And yep. Are you there, Branko?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thanks. Well, yeah, I'm the resident in number 9, which is building next to the proposed development. And yeah, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak and to express my concerns regarding the proposed development. Yeah, I already made written submissions, which I think they are pretty detailed, and also I made every effort to review all relevant documents, both from the application and also from the council documents. And I just would like to apologize if I misinterpreted anything in my written submission, and maybe today in this discussion. Firstly, in my view, the proposed development, which includes the demolition of existing building and replacing it with a block with a slightly smaller number of units, is not sustainable. The existing apartment block was built in 1982, and has not reached even half of its life. It could be renovated or upgraded instead of being demolished. And with a clever architectural design, it could be transformed in an attractive apartment block. I haven't seen such option at all in all documentation. And if we are in asset management business, this will be something like bad practice or typical mismanagement. Also, in my view, the proposed development is not a sustainable town planning step in respect to chronic shortage of housing in Sydney. By keeping the existing building and developing elsewhere, the total number of units could increase. Instead, the proposed development provides only 6 luxury building, multi-million apartments, which will have an adverse impact on housing availability and affordability. In my view, this is an example of profit-driven town planning, which is not beneficial to wider community, and it adds to inequality in housing sector. Also, I know that the proposed development is not in line with the North Sydney Council current policies and documents, in particular with the amended LEP. I'm thinking of Amendment 35, which prohibits residential flat buildings in R3 medium density residential zone. As I said in my submissions, the proposal does not comply with the core North Sydney Council DCP controls. In short, the height of the proposed building is clearly non-compliant. The proposed development does not meet setback requirements. It does not comply with the form, massing, and scale requirements, and it does not comply with the population mix requirements. I know that Ingham Planning in its application provided justification for breaching of the controls, which I questioned in my submissions, but I never received any response in that respect. But in general, if the proposed development involves upgrade or modification of the existing building, justification of breach of some controls could be reasonable, but when existing building is demolished, there is nothing that prevents the developer to comply with the planning controls. There is nothing that prevents them. Also, what's important point that the proposed development includes extensive excavation which goes up to 11 meters beyond existing levels, and that there is a real potential for damaging of the surrounding buildings. The geotechnical report, which was part of the original application, highlighted that risks, but in my view, the development application itself did not adequately address those risks. Also, the documentation does not include an assessment from a structural engineer, which is strongly recommended by the council. Furthermore, our special concerns relate to impacts of demolition and construction on quality of living in house and surrounding properties. They relate to noise, vibration, dust, and traffic and parking. So I won't elaborate on those. They are quite obvious. And so in conclusion, I just repeat myself saying that the proposed development is not sustainable and doesn't improve availability and affordability of housing in the area. And it adds to inequality in the housing sector. Proposal does not comply with the core DCP controls, which I mentioned before.
I think actually you've summarized your issues well. Branko,
all right. I'll just finish with the one sentence. Given the extent of significant issues, both design and planning, associated with this development application and adverse impacts, we believe that the council has grounds to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for this?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have we got representatives from the applicant online?
Yep, we've got Brett Brown, Paul Brace.
Brett Brown, Paul Brace, and Salon. Do any of you want to address the panel?
They're in a...
They're just coming up now.
Yep.
Yes, thanks, panel. My name's Brett Brown. I'm the town planning consultant for the applicant. I'll speak in the first instance, and if you have specific questions for the rest of the team, they can field those. We have Paul Brace, the applicant's architect. We have Ben Salon, the applicant's lawyer, and we have a representative of the owner, Mr. Tom Vergona, here as well.
Okay, so if you could, rather than make a representation for the proposal, actually address the issues that have been raised by submitters, that would be appreciated.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for your time today, panel. In relation to the matters that have been raised by Branko, firstly in relation to sustainability, we don't agree that the retention of the existing building is feasible. It's, as you've probably seen on site, it's not a particularly handsome building. And obviously to make better use of this land, it is proposed to excavate the site, and those types of works that need to be undertaken really wouldn't make it feasible to retain the existing building. So the intention is obviously to create a much nicer building, a building that is much more in keeping with the values of the conservation area, and to improve the visual quality for the area and for the neighbours as well. In terms of other issues of sustainability, I mean, the legislative test of sustainability for this application is compliance with basics, and obviously we have submitted a basics certificate and achieved those requirements. In relation to the reduced number of dwellings, there's no DCP requirement for a specific mix in this case because it's such a small development. We have considered that issue, and there's a range of dwelling sizes proposed, and the proposal is intended to specifically respond to a market demand, because in this area, the predominant type of units that are found tend to be smaller units historically. There's a lot of empty nesters looking for larger units to downsize to, and this is the market that is the market that people are developing to at the moment, because that's what's in demand. I know council has referred this issue to their strategic planning branch as well, and considered specifically this issue of dwelling loss, and they find that there's no problem with the proposal in relation to what's being proposed, resulting in the loss of only one dwelling. In relation to the recent amendment to the LEP to prohibit RFBs in the R3 zone, that doesn't affect the proposal because the DA was submitted before those amendments took place. And in any event, there would be existing use rights for the existing building that wouldn't prohibit the proposal from proceeding. In relation to the core controls that Branko referred to, there is a breach of the height control. Obviously, being an R3 zone where development tends to be of lower density, the lower building height of 8.5 applies. However, in this case, the existing building is already above that control. as are the adjoining buildings. And the character of this area isn't low scale development, it's quite high density development. So in terms of the impact of that height breach, the maximum height that we're achieving is actually the same as the maximum height of the existing building. There's an existing large skylight across the centre of the existing building that sort of sets the line, particularly in relation to the views from behind, and the proposal doesn't increase that height. By and large, the proposal complies with many of the controls, including the core controls of site cover and landscaped area, and in fact exceeds those controls and provides a much better outcome than a complying development would. In terms of Branko's comment that full compliance would be feasible, I just don't see how that would be the case, given that the existing building is already in excess of the height control. There's no way that this site would be able to be redeveloped in a feasible way and comply with that control. In relation to the excavation, the plans that you see before you are amended plans, and in response to issues raised by objectors and also by council staff, we made significant changes to the original proposal, and that included a significant change to the proposed excavation. The original scheme had excavation extending all the way to the eastern boundary, which is the boundary with Branko's property. So I understand that there were some concerns there about that being at a zero setback. And also it resulted in the loss of a large spotted gum in that eastern setback. So in response to that, we've basically amended the basement plan so it's more or less within the existing building footprint. And therefore all the vegetation that exists on the site, which is predominantly within the eastern and western setbacks, has been able to be retained. So we don't believe that there's any issue with the excavation. The geotech report's been submitted that indicates that the works can be undertaken. And obviously there's also conditions of consent that deal with the potential for impact on neighbours as well. In relation to demolition and construction, obviously council would have conditions of consent that would assist in minimising the impacts of the proposal during the construction phase. So look, we obviously are in support of the recommendation. The council's dealt with all the issues that have been raised by the submitters, both today and in their written submissions in a high level of detail. The conclusion is that the proposal won't have any unreasonable impacts, and we ask you to support the application. There's only one issue that we have in terms of one of the conditions, and that's in relation to condition A1. Maybe council staff have raised this with you previously, but the section drawings have incorrect references and should be numbered 301 and 302 instead of 300 and 301 as they currently are. As I've said, I've got the architect and others here. Should you have any specific questions?
I have a few questions. Thanks for that, Mr. Brown. Just regarding front setback, I haven't seen an open car lift before. So I'll just ask you, how does it operate? Where do cars wait? Are there acoustic impacts? And what do you think might be the visual impact on the streets? Like, I don't really know what you see when the lift descends. Is it just a hole?
Yeah, that's right. There's obviously safety barriers that are required to provide safety for that, but there's no structure above ground. It's just a platform that sinks below ground.
Was it ever considered to put the lift in the build form?
Look, it wasn't. The original proposal was to have it closer to the eastern boundary, but as I've said, there were issues with that arrangement. It's just the most efficient way of doing it. Obviously, the current arrangement is for a very large ramp driveway to come through the side and disturb the front setback. So
is this a lift where you sit in the car? You actually sit in the car and the car's lowered. Okay.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, so there's no visual impact apart from a car sitting there when it's needed. Obviously, it's a very small development, so we don't envisage there's any issues in relation to queuing. Council traffic engineers have assessed that, as well as our own traffic engineers, and don't believe there's any issue with that.
All right. Okay. In the northwest corner of the site, I noticed that there's an area that, well, it has potential for deep soil, but it has the bin holding area and the fire booster. Now, in that area, you've shown 2 trees with shading, and then you've shown a third one, a large one, with lighter shading. And I'm finding it a little bit hard to understand how those trees are being retained if their roots are liable to be impacted by the excavation. Is this something, how many trees are being retained in that corner?
I'm just having a look at the plans now.
Yeah, you'll see there's a faint circle. I don't know if that means that that's a tree that's being removed, or if that's a tree.
There is one, the large paper bark in that part of the site is proposed to be removed. It's right on the boundary, and it's actually stuck between the existing ramp driveway and the property boundary, and obviously being so close. So that's the one that's proposed to be removed. The others are intended to stay, and I think you can see from the basement plan.
So
the basement plan's actually.
You've done route mapping that can verify that those trees can be retained?
The route mapping has been done for a number of trees. I'm not sure if it's been done for those particular trees, but Council's landscape person has looked at all these trees in a lot of detail, provided conditions were appropriate in terms of ensuring that the trees that are retained are able to be maintained in a healthy manner.
Okay.
Paul, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, just if I could add, I think a good drawing to look at is the DA drawing, which is the demolition plan for the existing building. Those 3 trees currently are actually impacted by the existing driveway to the building, which actually drops in at that northwestern corner as a hard stand and then moves to the east as it drops down and heads south into the basement. In effect, by removing that entry point, we're actually increasing the soil around those trees in that corner of the site. So the existing building occupies a zone with those trees have grown up around that existing building effectively, and then that driveway actually impacts deep soil. So in effect, we're elevating the RL of the land at that front pocket of the yard back up to the street level.
Okay. The other thing I was just wondering about the arrangement of the waste cupboard and the boosters. It's sort of otherwise that's a sort of deep soil area. Like, it looks to me as though you could almost have another tree on the frontage, because it does look, you've provided before and after.
So there was one that's been removed.
Yeah, well, there's a big tree removal from there, but it does look as though, you know, there is potential for deep soil there, notwithstanding your plant room below. But it's the impact of the bins and the boosters. I sort of wonder whether or not you'd be open to doing something like having bins, a bin cupboard rotated along the side boundary, and putting the boosters on the other side of the property or something like that, just so you can, where you've got deep soil, allow yourself to have more
Landscape.
more landscape.
Yeah, I'll respond in the first instance. Obviously, you've indicated that we can't just remove those items. They are needed to meet council's requirements and I guess fire safety requirements as well. So moving them is not really going to increase the amount of landscaping. And we're well in excess of the deep soil that we're required to provide. I mean, we can consider their relocation if that meets the other requirements in terms of where they need to be located. The bin certainly has to be within 2 meters of the boundary. In terms of the hydrant, obviously that needs to be close to the boundary as well. But
maybe we could hear from the architect for a design response.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Like, I think at the moment, if we did rotate them into the site, we'd actually end up with more hard stand with the access sort of walkway to get to the bins. I do take your point though that that there is deep soil in that area, that northwestern corner, that could be used. And I think one of the benefits of the proposal is that we remove 2 street crossings at the moment and end up with a central single street crossing, which actually increases the area of footpath deep soil available directly in front of the site. So there could be another street plant or street tree be introduced at that point. There is someone did note that we have removed one large tree there, and that tree was actually removed because of the removal of the existing driveway. It was seen as very hard to stabilize that tree, I think, from a root perspective, the way it's sort of evolved. But I think the greatest deep soil is currently being provided by the arrangement that we have with the orientation of those cupboards to the street. So I think any sort of relocation would actually reduce that deep soil, yeah, like Brett has pointed out.
Well, in the interest of trying to sort of mitigate the impacts of that street tree loss, and in the interest of having more of a canopy to actually contribute to the streetscape, would you be able to include another tree in the area adjacent to the plant?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. I think it would probably be good to look at the landscape proposed plan, which does introduce three to four palms across the front of the site as like a quite a tall scale but decorative tree in that pocket. So there is in.
I think it's more like a canopy tree, more like what's there, like something that provides more things, shade and habitat.
It's definitely possible, and I suppose we can look at that tree with the landscape architect to see what can be introduced. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just checked the conditions about what trees are to be provided. It doesn't say anything specifically about a street tree, but obviously, if council can specify an appropriate species, I'm sure the applicant's more than willing to provide that.
We're looking at images of streetscape before and streetscape after that you provide, some of the images you provided with those Revit trees in the report, and it does look as though there's a big hole in the landscape. It's quite different from what was there before. So we're sort of responding to things that I don't even think the design review panel saw, because at that stage you had a different arrangement. So we're just sort of looking at it and wondering.
Sure.
What's the stack?
That's right. That tree was originally intended to stay, but when we did the amended design, we undertook to provide an additional street tree. So we were expecting a condition requiring that tree, but I can't see that there is one there. But as I said, it was our intention to make up for that lost tree on the site by providing a new street tree in that general location.
Condition G15.
Thanks, David. G15.
The landscape plan does show that additional street tree currently. Just.
All right.
You want to mention the other trees?
Yeah. And can I just now move to the waterfront side of the property? Sorry, Brendan, have you finished?
Yes, thank you, Jen.
Yep. The waterfront side of the property. I presume the applicant wouldn't have any objection to, prior to commencement or prior to occupation, that the sites be amalgamated into the one lot, because the whole development is predicated on the use of the two lots, and they could be amalgamated into the one lot.
Tom, you're on mute. Tom, you're on mute.
Okay. Thank you, panel. Yeah, I see no issue with amalgamating into one lot.
Right. Thank you.
That'd be fine with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And just a couple of other things. There are currently a couple of casuarinas. There's one that's very misshapen, and I'm not suggesting that you retain that, but down on that waterfront area, not right on the waterfront, but a little bit further back, there's a couple of casuarinas which are very healthy and would, to my mind, seem to be very characteristic of a waterfront area. If we could retain those and then also plant a couple of casuarinas along the frontage of the property as well. At the moment, we've got some very sort of, what shall I call them, miniature type trees apart from a few palms, but if we could have a few casuarinas along the frontage of the property, as well as retaining those 2 casuarinas that are in that additional portion of the lot.
We're pretty happy with, sorry.
And we're on the waterfront. Sorry, I was just asked whether I was on the waterfront or the street. No, I'm on the waterfront.
Yeah, no, so looking at the foreshore area, the casuarinas don't really provide any scope for anything underneath the canopy to grow. Nothing really grows under the casuarinas, and they do dump a hell of a lot of foliage.
Needles.
Yeah, and the needles. I think maybe we'd looked at an alternative sort of plantings that were more appropriate to the area. I'd need to, work with our landscape planner and council if you wanted an alternative, but I don't think casuarinas are sort of the right fit for that space.
Well, at the moment we've got a whole lot of palms that are being put in, and I'm just trying to look to see what sort of palms they are.
Yeah, 1 second.
ST5. I'll just go to the table. ST. No.
Yeah, the ones have got a. 1 second. I should have this up.
Aspirational.
The palms are not particularly indicative. I did notice some palms in one portion, but generally the palms are not something that are endemic to the area.
I think if you look at the landscape recommendations from council, they specified a different type of native tree to what we had in the original landscape plan. I'm just trying to pull up.
Oh, okay. Well, we do have some Kentia palms, which
I've first had a look at climate trees. No, these are the ones.
We've got date palms.
Yeah. 1 second here.
And I don't know, and they're dwarf date palms. Yes, I'll accept that the Kentias are the king of the palms, but I don't think we'll take the dwarf date palms. And we could have something that's a little bit more endemic that will do well in that foreshore area. It's just that we know that the casuarinas do well.
Yeah, I just don't think casuarinas are the right sort of tree for that.
I think the point is though that they exist.
Yeah.
And that's many years to contribute to that height and shade.
Yeah.
And the Design Excellence panel took real issue with the wholesale removal of trees.
Yeah. I think there's a very strong case for retention of existing mature and healthy trees. So I think probably it's something that needs to be considered to incorporate.
Okay. Panel, just be aware that there is a condition C28, which does require some amendments to that landscape plan.
All right. Okay, I'll look at C28.
And if you look at C28, the trees, the native trees that council have recommended we replace Tristaniopolis Lorena.
Sorry, what are they in English?
I'm not sure.
Water gums. Water gums are very good.
They're water gums there, and they do have quite a lush foliage.
Yeah.
And I think they're totally, I mean, obviously they look a lot better than the casuarinas. But yeah, that's the recommendations from council. So I could only refer to council's report, which is 80 odd pages.
Yeah.
They're very, very thorough in what they've gone through. And I'm in support of council's report, obviously, in that recommendation of replacing the trees, of those trees with a different type of water gum.
Now, can I just say that the water gums, yes, they would be very good for the waterfront area.
Yep.
But can I just say the 2 of the casuarinas that are healthy, they are in a pathway area, and it's not like you're going to be doing anything with that space.
Okay.
And it just seems that you could retain those that are in that location, apart from the misshapen one. Okay.
Yep, that's point taken. Thank you.
As long as we have enough water gums to break up the building bulk, because this, compared to other buildings in the area, and I'm sure you'll appreciate, this is the length of this, the horizontality of this compared to other buildings is something that we're looking at, and breaking it up with water gums I wouldn't have a problem with, and retention of just those 2 casuarinas.
That seems totally fair and reasonable.
Thank you.
Right. I think they were the 2 issues. Do you have anything else you'd like to?
I don't.
Okay.
No.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
We'll go on to the next application, which is 3 Commodore Crescent, McMahon's Point. And we have no submitters to speak, but we have representatives of the applicant, I believe. So we have David Waghorn from Planning and Engineering, Michael Plumbing, architect, and War Heritage Consultant, and Jeff Reed, the owner.
Good afternoon, panel. David Waghorn here from Planning Ingenuity. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I'll start the show. Unfortunately, we don't have Anne War, our heritage expert, with us today. She is on annual leave. So between Michael and I, we'll try and get by with the limited heritage knowledge we have, but we'll try and answer any questions you have. Before I start, panel, did you receive our late correspondence in relation to this matter?
It's in the bundle. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
Okay. If that's the case, then I'll try and shortcut my my presentation to you, the oral presentation to you. Basically, we accept the recommendations from council staff and particularly the heritage conditions. We accept them all but 2 conditions in relation to condition A8 and condition A10. In both regards, we generally accept the conclusions made, but we believe we can try and find an alternate solution to achieving those conclusions rather than the recommended conditions. In particular, I'll start with condition A8, which seeks to delete the glazing from the garden pavilion. Now, whilst it is titled a garden pavilion, it is definitely not the intention of the applicant to be an outdoor space. It is supposed to be an extension to the internal space. And the deletion of the glazing we think is unreasonable, given the reason on page 32 from the heritage officer appears to be in relation to glare. In terms of the alternate solution, we believe a combination of anti-reflective clear glazing coupled with retractable louvers are a much better solution, and we would respectfully request that the panel amend condition A8 in that regard. Moving to condition A10.
Can I just say, David, before you move on, this
Yes.
is something that was discussed on site, and the panel has had the opportunity to discuss it subsequently. And we would consider that given the purpose of this area as an indoor as well as an outdoor area, that non-reflective glazing to a certain standard would be appropriate. But clearly you'd have to provide details and a sample to the council to sign off on same. And we mentioned on site a commercial product, which I can't name, but nonetheless, we'd like as high a possible degree of non-reflective glazing.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that. I wasn't on at the site inspection, but the architect has conveyed as much to us. In that regard, then maybe it's best that we modify condition A8 for the non-reflective glazing, and then similar to I think it was condition A7 that required the details to come back to council for approval. Maybe we can impose that kind of condition on with regards to the retractable louvers, so council gets a final say in the design.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, and then in moving on to condition A10, again, we understand the rationale for the recommendation. However, with the demolition of part of the steps, it would create an uneven area there. So the late correspondence has a plan which shows that we would like to step down to a single timber deck level, which retains the same level as the existing, and then also retain the same sort of metal balustrades as existing there at the moment. So it doesn't increase the visual bulk or have any greater impact on the park than what is currently there.
Yeah, and that was explained to us on site, and we agreed that was a useful outcome.
Well, I think my job is done then. Yeah, thank you, panel. I think it sounds like we're in agreement. Otherwise, we accept all the rest of the conditions, and thank council staff for their assessment and recommendation.
Okay, any other points of panel?
I think we were just acknowledging perhaps the overhang to the glass could be increased to throw things more into shadow, and I'm just looking at it dotted above. And I see no issue with the roof getting a bit bigger.
Yes. So, did you hear that, Michael?
Yes. Do you want to? Firstly, thanks for your time on site this morning. I think sounds like it was productive for everybody. Are you referring to DA05 in terms of the dotted overhang?
Yeah, the eave overhang.
Yes. And what was
001 is what I'm looking at the moment, which is the landscape concept plan. So that might be incorrect.
Yeah, no, we definitely. So, is your intention to say if there is an eave overhang, it helps shading the glazing and therefore helping the glare? Is that what we're talking about?
In two ways. One, yes, to shade the glass and to also throw the glass back into a recessed shadow.
Recessive, yeah, exactly. No, that's definitely the intention. And that dotted line is the extent of the steel fascia, if you like, on that. The architectural intent there, the reason why it extends is exactly that, so that the glazing was recessive.
We just didn't think it was sufficient.
Yeah, it doesn't look very much. How much does it overhang at the moment?
Oh, okay. So just to finish, the other one there is it is also to incorporate the recess for the blinds on the pavilion. I'm just measuring off paper here. It's measuring at 400 mil, 40 centimeters.
Yeah, we'd suggested that 600 minimum.
Yeah, we can definitely achieve that.
Okay. All right.
I would just ask if we could keep it. So it was a fine steel fascia element to that building, and that extra protrusion is in a fine steel blade. We can certainly increase the length of that. As the architect, I wouldn't want to see the fascia become bulky.
No, we just think that
we're fine. We just want to increase it.
Yeah, more for the shading of the glazing.
Yeah, so I mean, not nominally to 600.
No objection. Yeah, and that can be constructed, so that's fine.
Yeah. Can I just confirm whether you mean western and southern, or just the western elevation?
Or both, really.
We'd like to keep it consistent around. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. We'll prepare a condition to that effect.
You can do it to the three. I mean, the three visible signs. If he wants to have it consistent.
You probably only see the western and the southern.
I know, but if he wants it up to.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. Yeah. We'll put it up appropriately.
The only where if you look at DA12, the only position where I say potentially not would be where that blade in question would protrude past the existing parapet blade wall of a previous edition. If it went past there on the northern side.
Okay, so if we've said the south and western sides, is that satisfactory with the consistency?
Yes, that's fine. Yes.
All right. Great. Thank you. Any other comments?
No.
Okay. And you're okay with the comments made and the amendments as drafted? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and the minutes will be available on the council's website.
Great. Thank you for your time. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, panel.
So I will close the public meeting at 3:05 p.m.